Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee today on June 7th, 2021, to hear the business as stated on the agenda before us. So before we start, we will deal with the election of chairman. I am the person presiding at this meeting, and I identify myself as the chairman of the Licensing Committee. And we need to receive nominations, please, for chairman of the subcommittee. May I have a nomination for chairman of this subcommittee, please?
Can I nominate you, Councillor Butt?
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams, and may I please have a seconder?
I'm quite happy to second you, Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. So I stand so elected. So I'll hand over to Sarah Colwick, who is our clerk for today, who will deal with housekeeping. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Sub recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please get everyone present to follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the Chairman will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we now move on to apologies. I'll ask the clerk if there are any apologies.
None received.
There are none. So at this stage, we thank our two reserves for standing in today, which are Councillor Brown and Councillor Hadley. We always have reserves just in case of illness or somebody can't make the meeting. So as it's the one item agenda, Councillor Brown and Hadley, you are more than welcome to stay to observe, but you won't be needed for this meeting. Thank you. So declarations of interest. I'll ask subcommittee members if they have any declarations of interest. Councillor Burton, do you have any declarations of interest?
No, Councillor Butt, I don't think I do.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Williams, do you have any declarations of interest?
I have none, thank you.
Okay, and for completeness, I have none either, so there are no declarations of interest from any member. So moving to the protocol for public speaking was at agenda item 4. Please note this is a revised protocol for virtual meetings due to COVID, and it has been circulated with the agenda sheet, and you will all have them at agenda item 4. So moving on to the substantive then, which is the item before us today, which is item 5, which is Juniper Tree Catering Limited, 38 Sultan's Way, Pool BH14HJR. So an application has been received for a new premise licence for the premises known as Jupiter Tree Catering Limited, 38 Sultan's Way, Pool BH14HJR. This matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination today. So we will start with an introduction of all parties. You've already heard from me. My name is Councillor Jude Butt, and I'm chairman of the Licensing Committee, and I'm chairman of the subcommittee for the purposes of this hearing today. And I'm ward councillor for Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. I'd like to introduce our members, please, and ask you also to advise us of your ward. Thank you. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Richard Burton. I'm a member of the subcommittee today and also the full licensing committee, and I represent Bearwood and Merley Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Councillor Williams?
Yes, hello. I'm also a member of the licensing committee in today's subcommittee, and I represent Littledown and Idford in Bournemouth.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. So we move on now to our applicant. Mr. Day, you're appearing on behalf of the applicant and your Lacey solicitors. Yes, Mr. Day, thank you.
That's right, Mum.
Right, okay. And we have Mr. Gomez.
That's correct.
If you'd like to tell us who you are, please.
I am the director of the Juniper Tree Catering and former operator of Sultan Hotel.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith.
I'm the managing director of Sultan's Marina Limited.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And we have Ms. Etches and Emma Coveney, who are both observing but won't be speaking. So we now have our representatives. Do we have Mr. Exton with us yet? I see a JE. Is that you, Mr. Exton? Your Are you with us?
His microphone switched off, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Exton, would you like to unmute
Yes,
your mic?
okay.
Hello, do you have video?
Sorry,
Would you like to put your video on, please? Mr.
Yeah,
Exton?
Yeah, hang on. I thought I was.
It is on.
It is on, isn't it?
Oh, that's you, is it? No picture. Well, we haven't got a picture of you.
I can see
Never mind.
I could see a picture, but of me in the corner. But I don't. I'm sorry. I'm
You are now with us, Mr.
using
Exton. Very
Zoom.
welcome to
Not
you.
Microsoft Teams. How do I see all the gallery? Is that
Well, I shouldn't worry too much. As long as we can see you, that's what matters. As
okay?
long as the chair can see you. So, Mr. Exton, if you'd like to say why you're here today, please.
Yeah, I'm representing David Matthews. It's really. I'd written in this on behalf of Sultan's Court Limited because I'm the chairman there, but I've missed the deadline date, which I wasn't aware of.
Well, that's okay,
It's
Mr.
easier way
Exton,
I've been given this proxy.
Mr. Exton, all the representations are very similar, so I'm sure that you'll be able to encapsulate your thoughts within those which have been put forward by Dr. and Mrs. Matthews. I'm sure we won't miss anything. Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And do we have Mr. Mulligan with us, Patrick Mulligan? I can't see a PM. Are you with us, Mr. Mulligan? Okay, you're not with us. That's okay. And Miss Simdin, are you with us? I can see an LC. Now we know your video's not working. You need to unmute your mic to say hello, I think, Miss Simdin.
Can you hear me now?
We certainly can. That's lovely. If everybody can keep their mics muted until I ask you to speak or until you need to intercede, please. It makes life a lot easier. But we know you don't have video, Miss Simdin. But don't worry, we won't forget you. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Very much. So you're very welcome. So moving on then to our officers, we have Nananka Randall.
Yep. Good morning, Nananka Randall. I'm the licensing manager for BCP.
Thank you very much. And Linda Cole.
Good morning, it's Linda Cole. I'm the legal advisor for the committee today.
Thank you very much. And Sarah Colwick.
Democratic Services, and I'll be clerking today's committee.
Thank you very much. We also have Democratic Services officers who are providing technical support to the meeting, but they take no part in the hearing. So I'd just like to check, please, that everybody's given notice of their intention to speak and that you've all been identified, and that anybody who wishes to withdraw at this time does so, or wishes not to speak has been identified. There's nobody. Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you. So I'll now explain the procedure of the actual meeting. It's fairly straightforward. The licensing officer will present the report. The applicant will then make their application. Questions of the applicant can be put by all parties, and members of the committee will go first. Responsible authorities and other persons will make their representations. We have no responsible authorities today, so it is just other persons, and those other persons are our representatives or objectors. Questions of the other persons will then come forward. Members of the subcommittee to go first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. I'll then conclude the hearing, and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days with regard to COVID requirements, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held, which is today, in accordance with the regulations. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And we will ask for information about that right of appeal from the legal advisor at the time. So I'll now ask all parties, please, to confirm agreement on the proposed procedure, or if you're not happy, to make representations. So Nananka Randall.
I'm happy.
You're happy. Mr. Day.
Ma'am, I'm happy, but just one very minor point. You will also have seen a representation from a Mr. Peter Donnelly, and he's withdrawn his representation. He's not here.
Yes, hence why we didn't mention him. Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Gomez.
Yes, I'm happy.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Mr. Smith?
Yes, I'm happy.
Okay. Ms. Etches, I have you here on the list, so as you are down, I will ask that you are happy with the process.
Yes, I'm happy.
Thank you very much. Mr. Exton? Mr. Exton, are you happy with the process? You'll need to put your mic on.
I'm happy with the process.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mulligan is not with us. Mr. Donnelly, as pointed out kindly by Mr. Day, has withdrawn his application. And we have Ms. Simdin.
Yes, I'm happy.
Thank you, Ms. Simdin, and Linda Cole.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so before we start then, I'll just remind all parties speaking not to repeat information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. All questions will be asked through the chair and there'll be no cross-examination of parties. So I will now ask our licensing officer, and I'm very grateful to our licensing officer, Nananka Randall, for standing in, because she's had to stand in at very short notice today, but ever the professional, she's well aware of the case. Thank you. Ms. Randall, if you'd like to present your case now.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. So the matter before you today is an application by Juniper Tree Catering Limited for a premises licence at 38 Sultan's Way, Poole. The application is for the supply of alcohol on and off the premises between the hours of 8 o'clock and 11 p.m, 8 a.m, 11 p.m, Monday to Sunday. The application is for a pop-up bar on the site of the former Sultan's Hotel, which has been demolished, and it is planned to remain in place until the new hotel has been built. The application is for a purpose-built wooden cabin to cater for the retail sale of hot and cold food and drink, including alcoholic beverages, and they'll be consumed on the terrace adjoining the cabin and adjacent lawned area, as well as to take away to consume elsewhere. The application states there will be no entertainment is to take place. The licensing authority received full representations from other persons on the grounds that this application, if it were granted, would undermine the licensing objectives. A further representation was received from John Exton, Chairman of Sultan's Court Management, but it was received outside of the consultation period and was too late to be considered. However, Mr. Exton is representing Dr. and Mrs. Matthews, who cannot attend the meeting today. Mr. Day, who represents the applicant, has mediated with the other persons, and he has proposed that the application be amended so that the permitted hours for the sale of alcohol, both on and off the premises, be varied, so that it's from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Sundays to Thursdays, and from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, and days that are bank holidays. And on Sundays, it says immediately preceding a bank holiday Sunday, but should this read Monday, I think? Because
Yes,
it would be a Sunday preceding a bank holiday Monday.
Mm-hmm.
The agenda pack contains a copy of the site plan, and a revised site plan which shows a reduction in the area originally applied for has now been circulated to all members, and I do apologise for the lateness of that. It was an error on my behalf. As a consequence of the mediation and offered amendments to the application, Mr. Donnelly, one of the other persons, has withdrawn his representation. It's down to members now to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nananka. So, members, are there any questions or points of fact for Ms. Randall? Councillor Burton or Councillor Williams? Do you have any questions on points of fact?
Not at this point, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Burton.
This point, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have no questions with regard to points of fact at this moment in time. So we'll move on now to the applicant, and the applicant, Mr. Philip Day, is representing them. So, Mr. Day, when you're ready, if you'd like to put forward your application on behalf of your client.
Thank you very much, Ma'am, and your colleagues. I'm mindful of your directive that I shouldn't repeat anything that's already been put before you in writing. Rarely has an application been dealt with, I think, more comprehensively than you will have seen, obviously, the application and then the long email that I sent to all of those who had made representations on the 24th of May, setting out our position and dealing or attempting to deal with all the matters that have been raised in the representations that were matters of concern to those who had objected. Beyond that, all of those who had made representations did respond to that email. As you know, one of them, Mr. Donnelly, withdrew his application as a consequence. The others still had concerns, which again I tried to address, and you should have, and I know you have got a document that is headed Summary Attempted Mediation. And there I have set out all of the emails that came back from those who had made representations and my responses or comments to them. I think trying to narrow it down to the issues, unless I'm much mistaken, I don't think that any of those who have made representations have an objection in principle to the grant of a license. And I take that as my starting point. There are, I think, two principal issues that concern them. The first is the opening hours of the premises, and specifically the start time of 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, I've addressed that in the responses and the mediation attempt, but just to reiterate and to underline that. This is not expected to be a destination bar or anything like that people from far and wide will flock to, not least because the parking there is pretty limited. It is not going to replicate the hotel, which had all manner of functions. Mr. Gomez, if necessary, can elaborate on that. But there were a number of weddings and other celebrations that took place at the hotel on a weekly basis, and its permitted hours were a great deal longer. This will simply be a facility aimed mainly at those who have boats, yachts that are moored at the marina and their guests, because as I'm sure you know, occasionally some of the boats and yachts that are there are chartered out or go out on a day trip with the owners, guests or whatever, and sometimes they like to start their day in a bit of style and turn up early and maybe have a glass of champagne or something like that before embarking, or indeed some food. There will be food available from here. There is a significant kitchen facility that can be used. It's not going to be particularly fancy food. Mr. Gomez, again, if you want more information about that, can elaborate on it. But that's the reason for wanting to open at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, it's been suggested by at least one person that it may be appropriate to condition it that members of the public as such cannot be served with alcohol until 11 o'clock in the morning. In practical terms, that would be extremely difficult to enforce, because if I've been invited by one of the boat owners to spend a day on his or her yacht, Sunseeker or whatever it is, then they're only going to have my word for it that is the case. It's also the reality of the situation that other than the marina and obviously the local residents, there really isn't very much down there at the moment. It's not like going to the beach or something like that. And of course, as you would have seen from the Google Earth picture, there is parking, but the majority of that parking is used by people who have business on the quay, and it doesn't have a massive car park that would cater for hordes of day trippers. And the other thing is that this is a little out of the way. It's slightly off the beaten track. And frankly, if you don't know it's there, then you're not going to realise it's there, if that's not too tautologous. The second aspect of it is the number of people that are likely to be there. To put it in context, at the moment there is seating available, or there will be seating available for about 25 people. More seating could be made available, but this is not somewhere that is going to cater for literally hundreds of people on a packed beach or anything of that nature. It's simply not going to happen. No regulated entertainment of any description will be provided. Every now and then, a temporary event notice has been given for right the other end of the marina. If you look at the Google Earth photograph on the left-hand side where the offices are and where Mr. Smith and Mr. Gomez and Ms. Edges are sitting at the moment, they have a DJ there sometimes, maybe a couple of times a year under a temporary event notice, but catering for people who are on their boats on a nice sunny afternoon or something of that nature. There is no proposal here to have entertainment of that nature in this specific location. It's also, I think, inappropriate for the reasons that I've set out in the various submissions to impose a capacity restriction on this. I would also underline that obviously all of the responsible authorities have been served with copies of the application and the like. Each and every one of them was happy with the application as it stood. Occasionally, environmental health, the police may ask for additional conditions and the like. They have not done so in this case. And I think the final point that I would want to emphasise, as much for the benefit of those who have made representations as anything else, a comment has been made or a request has been made that the licence be kept under review. I'm not quite sure what they had in mind there. Maybe asking that it be granted for a limited period of time and then you come back and look at it again. Of course, the Licensing Act these days, and indeed since 2005, gives anybody who lives in the locality, in fact, anybody at all, the right to seek a review of the licence, to call it in, if there is any issue with regard to any of the licensing objectives, and in particular, in this case, the prevention of public nuisance. If neighbours, residents, or whomsoever, any of the responsible authorities, come to the conclusion that this licence having been granted is causing a problem, then there is no fee to pay. This is a relatively simple application form to complete and to send to the council and so on. And then the matter has to come back before your committee, ma'am, or one of the subcommittees to consider whether there is cause for concern and whether anything needs to be done. And the range of options is just about as great as it can be. You can determine to do absolutely nothing on the one hand, at the other extreme you can revoke the licence, and in between you can suspend it, you can impose additional conditions, you can change the hours, or anything like that. So whilst it is the case that the application is for the grant of a permanent licence, with the intention that as and when the new hotel is built, and incidentally the licence for the old hotel is still in situ, it's still there, very, very different from the licence application that's now being made. But as and when a new hotel is built and a licence attached to that, then the intention would be to surrender this licence and of course to remove the pop-up facility because it would no longer be required. I think, ma'am, without wishing to be discourteous to anybody, if I say any more, I will be repeating some or all of the ton of material that you have before you. And I would therefore leave it at that. I would ask you to grant the licence, please, as applied for, subject to the reduction in hours that volunteered at the beginning of the mediation. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, as indeed is Mr. Smith, who's the Managing Director of Salters Marina. Ultimately, it's their project. The application is made by Juniper Catering Limited, who is Mr. Gomez, who will be the DPS, assuming that this application is granted, because he will be the one responsible for the day-to-day running of these premises, as indeed he was the person responsible for running the hotel until it was demolished not so very long ago. Ma'am, unless I can assist you further, I will draw a line at that point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Day. I must commend you for the mediation email information that you sent. It was very helpful to see what had gone on and how far we had got, so that we were able to decipher the important factors that were in fact remaining to be dealt with. That was extremely useful, Mr. Day, and I thank you for it, and I'm sure the members also thank you for it. It was very helpful. Now, we're advised that Mr. Mulligan has joined us. So, Mr. Mulligan, hello. I'm the Chairman, Councillor Judes Butt. Are you there?
appears that he's dropped out again, Chairman.
He's dropped out again. Okay, then. Well, we'll try and cut in with Mr. Mulligan as he drops in and out, and hopefully he'll be able to pop in long enough to make representation if he so wishes. So thank you very much, Mr. Day. Is there anything that Mr. Gomez or Mr. Smith would like to add to what Mr. Day has said? Mr. Gomez.
Well, I'd just like to point out that this, I've been the operator of the Southern Hotel for the last 16 years, and all the residents here have enjoyed, you know, these premises, and know that we have been very careful with who we serve and how we run the business. This business that we are running now is a much smaller operation. I don't know, percentage-wise, perhaps 1/4 of what we used to do at the hotel. It's a small operation business. I will be personally responsible for the running of it, and no events will take place, and therefore I believe most of the concerns that the residents, local residents raised are just not going to happen. And once more, with regards to the early license to supply alcohol in the morning, it's as has been stated, it's mainly a drink. Sometimes people would like to have a breakfast and have a glass of prosecco or champagne. We wouldn't. We never encouraged binge drinking, and we have been very careful with who we serve and to keep it safe and keep it enjoyable for who is around the premises. So all of these will be observed, and it's most for the enjoyment of the marinas berth holders and for the residents that have been enjoying you know, these premises over the years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez. Mr. Smith, did you have anything to add?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we now, Mr. Mulligan is back with us. So let's say a quick hello to Mr. Mulligan. Hello, Mr. Mulligan. My name is Councillor Judith Butt. I'm chair of this committee. Can you just make yourself known to us, please? You'll need to unmute your mic and put your video on. Okay, having some difficulty there. Well, I'll leave you to think about that, because we do need to move on. So we now have questions of the applicant by all parties. So firstly, I'll hand over to members of the committee. Councillor Burton, do you have any questions at this moment in time?
No questions at this moment in time, thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you. And Councillor Williams, do you have any questions for the applicant at this moment?
Likewise, not at the moment, thank you.
Okay, well, I have a few for clarification, if that's okay. I think there was some deep concern from the representations made and the objectors about the 8 AM opening time, and the need for assurances, I think, to be given. Although we have just heard from Mr. Gomez with regard to some of those assurances, I think the fear of a drunken revelry at 8 o'clock in the morning when you live in the flats above is a concern to the residents. So I wonder whether there were any other assurances that could be given with regard to exactly what this means and why 8 AM is so pivotal when other local areas don't open until 9 o'clock in the morning, other local premises in the locale. You say that it's suggested that you were going to limit the use to their guests. Obviously, trying to condition it with regard to members of the public is difficult. But how indeed do you intend to handle that? How do you intend to manage that, identify, etc., as to who's who, so that you can encourage people to use the area safely who actually would frequent it in the first instance? We've had a confirmation, I think, Mr. from you, that there is seating for about 25 people. So I'd just like a confirmation that that's the case. Why are you asking for off sales? What is your rationale behind off sales per se? And those off sales would the item bottles, tins, glass, perspex with regard to safety there. I think that obviously the matter of profit and loss, which is mentioned to a large extent, is not a consideration for licensing objectives. So those are my really, just to clarify, please, and to confirm or enlarge upon. Thank you. I don't mind who answers.
I'll deal with that in the first instance, and I'm sure Mr. Gomez and Mr. Smith need be. As you may or may not be aware, there is actually already an off license right down at the very end, next to the marina office and so on and so forth. The intention here really is simply to allow people, if they want to buy a bottle of champagne or prosecco or whatever, and take it onto their boats, or take a drink back to their boat or yacht or whatever to consume it, then they may do so. It's not intended to be an off license. If people want to buy a 4-pack of beer at £1 a time from Tesco or whatever, then they can do so. I don't wish to sound snobbish or anything like that, but that is simply not the trade or the business that these premises are after. And I don't think it's going to be, it's not really going to be a question of controlling it, because the demand for that sort of thing is simply not going to arise. This is going to be priced at the very top end of the market, named very squarely at berth holders and their guests. And of course, local residents who did in the past use the hotel facilities and sat out in the lawn area outside the hotel. This restores that facility to them. As I've said in my representations, I cannot imagine, we cannot imagine, there are going to be very many people who are going to want to sit down there at 8 o'clock in the morning and start drinking pints of beer. And that's not the target audience at all. But we do know that there are those who like to make an early start if they're going to have a day out on their boat, their yacht or whatever, and would like to start the day with an early drink, as Mr. Gomez has said, a glass of Prosecco or champagne, but more to the point as well, to have something to eat. If the hours were restricted until 11 o'clock in the morning, then the facility to go and grab a burger or whatever it is before you set off for the day would simply not be available. So we need to open at 8 o'clock in the morning to be able to provide the breakfast facilities and so on. And dare I say, what is then the harm for the small percentage of people who may want a drink at that time of the day to cater for them?
Thank you. And the other areas?
Sorry, I'm not with you, ma'am.
I asked about if you'd confirm the seating.
Yeah, at the moment, well, Mr. Gomez asked him that earlier on this morning. Can you just confirm that at the moment you've got tables and chairs for about 25?
If I may say, it was a misunderstanding. We have 25 tables at the moment that will be available, not 25.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I apologise. That was my mistake. I misunderstood.
Right. So could we please have the figure? 25 tables with how many, Mr. Gomez, at each table? What's the approximation of the figure of the maximum capacity that you can take?
Well, sitting area would be each table could sit up to 4 people. So we're talking about a capacity for 100 people. However, it's interesting to mention that the bar and kitchen facility are a small facility. So we wouldn't, at one time, it's very difficult to say that we even would be able to cope for such a demand. So this number of tables is more for the comfort of the guests that are in the area, but it's unlikely that we're going to have that full, at least, but it's possible, but because of our capacity to serve these people is limited, it's very unlikely that we will go any even close to that number.
Okay, yes, I understand that. Thank you. Did somebody say they wanted to? I heard a sharp intake of breath. Was that a prelude to somebody?
Yeah, sorry, Nick Smith here.
If you'd like, Mr. Smith, did you want to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay,
I'd just like to say that we primarily, our business is a marina and boatyard, and really this is a facility for our customers and local residents. And the last thing I want to do is lose a marina berth holder down to having some sort of party venue on the site, because our main business is to look after the berth holders, and this is a sort of a sideline facility for our customers.
I understand. Thank you. That's extremely helpful. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions of the applicants by any of our representatives? Mr. Exton, I can't ask yourself because you're actually representing Dr. and Mrs. Matthews with regard to their application, so that's quite complicated there. So I'll firstly go to Ms. Simdin. Do you have any questions for the applicant, Ms. Simdin? Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the toilet facilities, if there are going to be 25 tables with however many people sitting around them. That's not been discussed so far.
Okay, so your question is, do you believe there's adequate toilet facilities with up to 100 people potential, although the facility can't cater for that amount? But that's your question, Ms. Simdin?
It is.
Right. Do you have any other questions, or is that your major question? Ms. Simdin? Okay, well, we have one question from Ms. Simdin. So if one of the applicants would like to answer that, please.
Chair, Ms. Simdin's got a mic on. I think she was asking you another question.
Yes,
I was.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Cole. Ms. Simdin, if you'd like to put your mic on and ask the second question, and then we can field both of them. Thank you.
Okay, so you should be able to see me now as well.
Oh, I can indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, Ms. Simdin.
So my other question was, we had 2 sets of drawings. I understand that we have the revised set now, and you've all seen that. Can we be assured that there'll be no further change to the drawing subsequently to what we've seen?
Okay, well, the licence will be applied to the up-to-date drawing, and it would only be relevant to that. And if there were any change, you'd have to come back for an alteration. So it'll be apropos to what's put forward today, which was, I think, the relevant one was the one sent this morning. We do need some confirmation actually as to which one is relevant and which one isn't. That would be helpful. Thank you, Ms. Simdin. So there's a question with regard to the toilet facilities. Are they suitable and are they adequate? And which set of drawings is applicable, and that question about change.
Well, I see.
Cole, thank you.
Cole, yeah.
Yes, Chair, I just want to remind you and those that have made the objections, the questions really need to be around the licensing objectives, and I don't think that the toilet provision would be a consideration for licensing objectives. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a consideration for somebody, and I'm sure the premises obviously to run the establishment properly would have to consider that. But as far as the licensing committee are concerned, the subcommittee today, I don't believe they can consider toilet provision.
I think you're quite right, Ms. Cole, but I still want the question asked. I think it's a good question so that can be put in that context, and it gives an opportunity for the applicant to answer as to why that's not relevant. So thank you for raising that. I'm most grateful. So if we can go back to you then, Mr. Day, thank you.
I'll deal with the plan quickly. The plan, which is the one that has the enclosed storage area, which is now excluded from the licensed area, is the plan that will be attached to the license. And as you quite rightly say, if there were to be any change to that, then a further application would have to be made. And if there were objections to the changes, then we would be back in a hearing such as this. But there is no intention to submit any other plan, except, of course, when the hotel comes to be built. As far as the toilet facilities are concerned, I did deal with that in the response to the representations but can I ask Mr. Smith, please, to confirm what the situation is with regard to lavatory and other facilities, either on site or closely adjacent to it?
Yes, I'd be grateful. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Day. Mr. Smith, if you can respond, thank you.
Yes, we currently have 2 toilet blocks on site, including disabled facilities, and we have also purchased at the cost of £15,000 a mobile toilet facility that will be arriving shortly, both ladies and gents.
So these toilet facilities are in addition to that was stated within your application?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope that gives some support, although obviously not a licensing matter, still something which is of interest in the community and in the locale to Ms. Simdin. Thank you, Ms. Simdin, for your questions. So we have Mr. Mulligan with us. I'm not sure if we do or we don't, but we'll try again. Mr. Mulligan, are you with us? If you are, pop your mic on rather. And if you have any questions. Okay, we're not having an awful lot of luck. Okay, then we'll just advice actually, please, Mrs. Cole. Mr. Exton didn't put a representation in, so I'm not entirely certain if he's allowed to ask any questions at this moment in time. Could you advise, please? 1 minute, Mr. Day. I can see your hand. Thank you, Ms. Cole.
Well, strictly no, because he's not raised an objection. No.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that advice. I just didn't want to seem to be difficult when Mr. Exton is here on behalf of others. Thank you very much, Mrs. Cole. Mr. Day, yes?
Well, I'm not in the slightest bit trouble. If Mr. Exton wants to ask a question on behalf of Dr. Matthews and his good lady, then I'm not going to stand in his way. I bow, obviously, to any advice that you're given by your legal advisor, but I'm not going to try and silence him or shut him up in any way, shape or form.
No, thank you, Mr. Day, and neither are we. But unfortunately, process and policy, we have to follow it. It is a requirement, and we cannot deter from it. I'm grateful to Mrs. Cole for her advice, but I'm sure Mr. Exton will understand. So can we try again? I have Mr. Mulligan. I can see PM on my screen, but we don't seem to be able to contact him. Mr. Mulligan, are you there? Can you hear us? You need to unmute your mic if you wish to speak, and I'll ask any questions. Okay, well, I'll really have to leave it. I think we've made every effort there to try and involve Mr. Mulligan in any questions, but he's not able to do so. So it's now the opportunity of the other persons, because there are no responsible authorities making representation, to put forward their representations. So we have, it is just then Miss Simdin, because we don't have Mr. Donnelly, he's withdrawn. Mr. Mulligan's having some difficulty. Mr. Exton is not speaking on his own behalf. So, Ms. Simdin, when you're ready, if you'd like to put forward your representation. Thank you.
Whilst we really applaud having some catering facilities opposite us again, because we enjoyed the hotel being there, we're still worried about the 8 AM opening time. And whilst I understand that some consideration has been made on the other end, because they've taken off an hour from the Monday to Wednesday, I'm still worried about the 8 AM part of it. We live in a very unique surrounding, as you may appreciate, in that we've got blocks of flats and houses directly opposite. And my first thought always was about the noise. But I can see from what has been built, that's changed, which is why I asked about the drawings. So I think that's my biggest concern about the licensing, is the 8 AM opening, which is a repeat, I suppose, of what I've already said.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Ms. Simdin?
No, because we've covered the toilets, and thank you for Nick for mentioning the extra toilets. I would be interested to know where they're going to be positioned. That's maybe a technical point, but are in close confines to everything here. Yeah, so that's really, I think, the main points, and everything else has been covered.
Okay, I'm afraid thank you very much, Ms. Simdin. I'm afraid I have a technical issue. My computer is going to start in 14 minutes. So if you I know it's throwing a wobbler. So if you lose me, you'll have to give me a few moments to come back in. Okay.
And that one point is that Mr. Mulligan has just joined me because we live quite close together, and he's had trouble getting through. And he may want to speak now, or when you choose.
Is Mr. Mulligan with us now?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Mulligan, you're with us. Okay, so if you'd like to put forward your representation, please. Thank you, Mr. Mulligan. We had great difficulty contacting you, but you're here now. Thank you.
Yes. It's the opening hours, I suppose. In my letter to P Day at Lacey's, I said the opening hours 8 o'clock in the morning, which the explanation given was that it was for birth holders only. This is a commercial premises open to the public, and 8 a.m. would be, would encourage possibly people, early drinkers, coming down to the site. I mean, the site is a hotel, and it could be used for any event from 8 a.m. My concern was the 8 a.m. opening. And the numbers, but you have talked about the numbers of people that are licensed for or will be available to do there to host. And you have said off sales is for birth holders only. And again, if you give a license for off sales, it's open to everybody. It's open to the members of the public. And there's no stopping anybody coming down 8 o'clock, getting a drink and going to there's a local beach here that people will attend. So my problem was the 8 a.m. opening. It's a commercial premises, and it will be open to the public from 8 a.m. And even though we have got assurance that's for birth holders only, it's commercial premises. You want to make money there. And it will be used to make money. So 8 a.m. was my biggest problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mulligan, for your contributions. So we don't have any further speakers, unless, of course, Ms. Randall, you would like to add anything?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, just to let you know, I'm having difficulty now because I'm just about to be thrown out of a screen on my BCP computer. I'm trying to boot up my ordinary computer. So if you lose me, don't panic. I will get back to you as soon as possible. And my apologies, but this is what happens with our technical systems. So we now move on to everybody, I hope, has had their opportunity to ask questions. Just like to know if the applicants have any questions of the representatives. Thank you. Mr. Bay, do you have any questions, or Mr. Gomez or Mr. Smith? Do you have any questions of the objectors?
I don't have any questions, but if it assists at this stage, the location of the on-site toilet is actually shown on the plan. They're tucked away behind the pop-up facility, so they could hardly be further away from the residents' accommodation and so on. It's round the back. The other facilities are on the roadside as you go past the site down towards the end of the quay. That's just for information, but I've got no questions.
Okay. Members, my deepest apologies. I should have come to you first. Do you have any questions of the representatives? So, Councillor Burton.
No, thank you very much, Chair, on at the moment.
And Councillor Williams?
Yes, I wonder if we could be reminded of the licensing hours that the hotel enjoyed when it was there.
If you feel that's helpful, Councillor Williams, do we have those hours?
I can
Yes,
confirm previously it was 24 hours.
Okay. Is that helpful, Councillor Williams? It was all the time basically. So this is a cut down. Yes, indeed. Okay. So I'm sorry. I'm going to have
Linda
to.
Cole's hand is up. Sorry, Councillor Burt.
Ms. Cole, yes. Yes, Mrs. Cole, I can see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, have we not heard from Mr. Exton?
Well,
From Mr. and Dr. and Mrs. Matthews, indeed.
hello, can you hear me now?
Oh, you're there. Right, lovely. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I was by you, Miss Cole.
Mr. Exton, that you're going to be cut off. Mr. Exton, if you just let me speak. It may be I'm having dreadful difficulty with my systems. I'm trying to stay live and having to reboot and reboot. So please forgive me if people are being omitted. My apologies, Mr. Exton. But it may be that you're cut off in mid sentence in any event. I've got to restart in 8 minutes. So if you would like to cover what you have to say in that, then I will reboot and join you after that. Thank you, Mr. Exton. You're speaking on behalf of Dr. and Mrs. Matthews. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I misunderstood Linda Cole earlier. I thought in spite of Philip Day saying I was welcome to talk from their side that I wasn't allowed to under the rules and regulations. But speaking on behalf of Dr. David Matthews and his partners they are generally supportive of the whole scheme. We all live in the same block of apartments at the top of the road that leads down to the hotel, and we've enjoyed going down there. The biggest concern is we appreciate the expectations, but unfortunately expectations do not often go the way that one expects. And so it's such a great spot down there, and I appreciate what Mr. Smith and Mr. Gomez are saying in terms of limitations of numbers to 100 or maybe 100 plus standing room for some people at the bar. I don't know how that works. But also we're concerned for the local residents there like Judy. And it seems to me that it becomes private land. And I'm wondering what security measures can be put in place to stop that capacity being exceeded. You've got gates which are left open, and I know there's meant to be security there, but is there any intention to put added security measures in to make sure that the numbers are not breached in terms of what you can do in terms of serving capacity? Okay. And the second thing I was going to mention is that without the hotel there, the music carries across the water, and I know there's not meant to be music there, but they do have large speakers at the end by the where the chandlery is and the marina offices, where a radio station can, when it gets its license, can blast out. And we've had examples of the music coming over through into the late hours of the evening. And I'm sure people may sort of put them on their boats and things like that, but I assume there's nothing one can do about that, that the music will carry as it does, and it will be a popular spot for many people to go to.
Well, I think you've probably answered your own question there, Mr. Exton, but I will ask for some confirmation of that. Mrs. Cole, you still have your hand up. Is that a legacy hand? Thank you. Okay, so there were some questions, I think, that came out of that. There was for the applicants with regard to any added security, although not technically a matter for the committee. And with regard to the music carrying across the water, perhaps you could give some confirmation on that. Thank you. Mr. Day?
Ma'am, the application does not include any form of regulated entertainment, live music, recorded music, full stop. It's with respect, not relevant with regard to this application because it doesn't include music. As far as security is concerned, the entire covered by closed circuit television and additional CCTV will be installed with regard to this area and around the bar and the like. There is a 24-hour security presence on site anyway. Mr. Smith can give you further information about that if need be, even to the extent that I'm not exactly sure personally how this works, but the security people have to log on or sign in periodically just to make sure that they don't find a quiet corner to curl up in and go to sleep during the night. So yes, there is security, and there will be further security arrangements, particularly in terms of CCTV for this specific locality. I think the only other thing I want to emphasise is this, and Mr. Smith has already said this. The primary intention here is to provide a facility for the berth owners. If they start getting upset because there is rowdy behaviour or anything like that, and they start moving away, then that would entirely defeat the object of the exercise as far as Mr. Smith is concerned. Therefore, it is very, very much in the interest of Mr. Gomez and Mr. Smith to make sure that those who are on the boats are not upset, let alone the local residents, because as has been commented, the principal business is that of a yacht marina and chandlery. These are very expensive berths, and to lose even one or two would be a very high price to pay for a bit of rowdy behaviour at these premises, which is why it is very, very much in their interest to make sure that there is no disturbance to anybody, and that obviously includes local residents, as well as those who are on their boats, who are actually going to be in much closer proximity in some cases than local residents. I hope that assists.
Thank you very much. I think you answered that quite expansively. Thank you. So I'm in a position, ladies and gentlemen, where in 3 minutes I'm going to have to restart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a very short adjournment, if I may, members, just to sort out my system, and then come back to you at 11:05, hopefully, and we will go into summary. I hope that's acceptable. Members, are you content? Councillor Burton?
Yes, I'm very content with that,
Thank
Chair.
you so much for your indulgence. I do appreciate that. And Councillor Williams?
Yes, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you again, Councillor Williams. So could I ask, please, for the live stream to stop, and we will rejoin in this meeting room at 11:05, hopefully all together. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your indulgence for the short adjournment, just to sort out my technical problems. We're all present and correct, so we now will ask all parties will be given the opportunity to sum up with regard to their matters. So we will go in order of the person who spoke last will go first, so or the people. So we will ask Ms. Simdin if you would like to sum up, please. Thank you, Ms. Simdin.
I think we've talked about everything at length now. I don't think there's anything else that I want to add at this stage. I think we've covered everything. I'm still anxious about the 8 a.m, which I'll emphasise again, and I'll leave that obviously to you to decide. And I can't understand why it's difficult to enforce a berth holder policy up until a certain time in the morning still. That still baffles me slightly. Whilst the hotel, when it was here, we were blocked by the hotel from any noise at all, and we don't have that security now in place. We'll have a big shed, which is in front of us right now, which is something that will block the noise, but I still worry that there will be noise. Okay, not from people, but from people. And in times of pandemic, because it is still going on, let's make no mistake, I worry about younger people perhaps congregating. I know that Mr. has said that there will be security, but I worry about younger people coming down and congregating, using their mobile phones to tell everyone where they are. Thank you, Mum. I'm finished.
Thank you, Ms. Simdin. Thank you very much. We're perfectly aware of your anxiousness with regard to this application. Thank you for being so honest and open with us. Mr. Mulligan, your opportunity to put forward a summary. Thank you, Mr. Mulligan.
You can hear me. I'm on my phone at the moment.
That's fine. We can hear you.
Good. Yeah, just maybe to copy what Judy was saying. The 8 license worries me that it is the premises and it will be open to the public from 8 a.m. and as such it could attract a crowd who are not the berth holders. I understand that they said it'll be for berth holders only, but it will still be and I'm sure we won't, but we could have bottomless prosecco parties from 8 a.m. Sorry, yeah. So just the 8 a.m. license would be a problem for me because I feel it goes against the licensing objectives of protection to the public and children, especially in the flats. There are families in the flats, and that's about all. I mean, the other thing I would like to say, nothing at all to do with the licensing, is that I felt it would have been much better if.
Well, Mr. Mulligan, if it has nothing to do with the licensing, then it's not really relevant. So we'd prefer you didn't share that with us if it's not relevant to the licensing objectives. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you. Mr. Exon, I still have some confusion as to your presentation today, but if you could summarise on behalf of Dr. and Mrs. Matthews' submission, we'd be grateful. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. First of all, I'd like to emphasise that we are in support of this pop-up and the licensing, which is going to be acceptable to the local residents. And our only concern had been if expectations are exceeded, and I think I've been reassured that security measures are there to make sure it's just for the local neighbourhood and for the marina people who keep their boats there. So we're very happy to support this and look forward to going down there and being regular customers again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Exon. That's extremely heartening to hear. Thank you very much indeed. We now move to Mr. Day, if you'd like to summarise.
Thank you very much. It's been an interesting hearing because I think that we've really managed to narrow down the issues. As I said, perhaps a little optimistically at the beginning, I didn't think that anybody was objecting in principle to the licence, and I'm grateful in particular to Mr Exton and the other residents for showing their support in principle for this. So thank you very much for that. The two issues that I think that we're left with, one is this question of capacity. I would respectfully suggest that this is not an appropriate case in which to seek to limit capacity to any specific number, because it's really not going to be necessary for the reasons that have been explained to you by Mr Smith and by Mr Gomez. In terms of the opening hours, again, I do emphasise that this is not just about alcohol. This is also about, you know, catering for food and so on. This is not an application that includes late night refreshment, in other words, hot food and drink in the middle of the night and so on and so forth. But we want to be able to have the facility to open at 8 o'clock for all of the reasons that I won't repeat yet again. And indeed for local residents, if they suddenly decide one bright morning that they'd like to come down and have a nice cooked breakfast for them to sit out in the sunshine, then why should they not be allowed to do that until 11 o'clock in the morning, and so on. Finally, I emphasise this again, and as much for the benefit, because I know that you, Ma'am, and your colleagues and officers are fully aware of this, the provisions with regard to review of a licence. If worst fears are turned out to be correct, and we sincerely hope that they won't, and can assure you that they won't be, but if they are, then this licence can be called back in for review at any time with any of the consequences that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and which I don't propose to repeat. I therefore invite you and your colleagues, Ma'am, to grant the application as requested, subject only to the amendment with regard to the hours. And just to correct one very small point that was made about that, it's not just Mondays to Wednesdays that we've reduced the hours. It's actually Sundays to Thursdays. We're only seeking the 11 p.m. On Fridays, Saturdays, and then on bank holidays. And thank you, Mrs. Cole, for correcting my typo. Sundays immediately preceding a bank holiday Monday. I don't know how I missed that, but I did, and I apologise. Thank you for picking up on that much earlier on, Mrs. Cole. Unless there is anything else that I can assist you with, those will be my submissions, and all that remains is for me to thank all of those who made representations for engaging with me. At least you had every opportunity to ask your questions, and you've had the responses. I appreciate that they're not 100% what you would like to hear, but it does make a nice change to be able to have a constructive dialogue with people, so that we can, as we have succeeded in this case, to narrow down the issues. It is, of course, ultimately a matter for you, Ma'am, and your colleagues to put everything into the melting pot, but your task may be made a little easier because of the way in which this matter has progressed. So again, thank you very much, and thank you for your time and patience in listening to me and my clients.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Indeed, the thanks for the review of the opening hours. That notion where it was noted was in fact for Mr. Nanka Randall, who actually raised that with us. So thank you, Mrs. Randall, for raising that. Bit of a glaring gaffe there, but we've covered that, the change in hours, that it's correct for the Monday and the preceding Sunday. Yes, as I said before, I found the information that you sent with regard to how you got to negotiations extremely helpful. It's good to see that applicants are talking to the community at first base. It makes absolute sense. It's nothing worse than the community feeling that they're on the defensive. It's good to work with people to try and find a resolution that everybody can be mostly happy with, which is the way we move. Were we so set to grant this morning after our deliberations, which of course we will have to consider. So that said, I hope that everybody's happy that they've all had an opportunity to put forward their points, even though somewhat with some difficulty, Mr. Exton, but I think you did very well through.
to have lost our chair. She's frozen.
And silence. Will this go viral on the internet?
I doubt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I suggest a shorter German.
I have to leave for another meeting, but thank you for this whole process, which has been very interesting and educating. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.
Hello, everybody. Once again, I'm terribly sorry about that. It's loving me this morning. Right, I'm sure you had a lovely chat about how useless the chair is this morning and how her tech is letting her down. My apologies. Okay. Thank you very much, Richard. Bless you. Okay, thank you. So we're back again live then. So I will revert back to item 9, but I will now conclude the hearing, my tech allowing. The subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and clerk to deliberate. Notification of subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days with regard to COVID, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held, which is today in accordance with the regulations. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And could I ask our legal advisor please to explain that right of appeal? Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you. So there will be a right of appeal to the decision that is made today. That appeal should be made to the Dorset Magistrates Court within 21 days of formal notification of the decision that's made.
Thank you very much indeed. So again, ladies and gentlemen, just before we say goodbye to each other, thank you so much for your attention today. Thank you for everybody's contributions and the way in which we've all worked together to have our hearing today. And again, my profuse apologies about my technology failures. So we'll now conclude the hearing and we will go into our room to deliberate. Thank you so much. And Mr. Jones, if you could take us off live stream, thank you.